Okay, we're live.
A lot of people out there.
Exactly.
Okay. Welcome to the Motor Vehicle Subcommittee, everyone. Being here, let's try to get through as much as we can for the morning. Do you have any specific order, Patrick, that you would like to go in, or should we just take it from the top and start going?
Wherever you want to go.
Okay. Well, let's start with the top, HB 291. That's Delegate Crimm's bill, failure to pay. We had a little bit of conversation about that. Well, we had a lot of conversation about that last week. Is there any thoughts? Obviously, everybody knows there's a pretty big fiscal note, bonding issue.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I think we've discussed this a couple times. We had the administrator on and his staff answering a lot of questions, and I'd like to move unfavorable. I think the fiscal note's too high, and it really has a lot of bad consequences. So I'd like to move unfavorable.
I'd like to continue discussing just a little bit. Just looking back at my notes.
Okay. Let me bring up.
One of the issues I'm having is, you know, I'm getting my years mixed up. I don't know if it was last year or the year before, where there were discussions and big issues with the actual contractor. You know, I've been getting some phone calls and emails, really concerned in general about the contractor's ability to even manage this service, which I think on one hand is causing some of the problems. And even if it moved smoothly, I think there is some issues, especially now with the mail. Like today, speaking of red light cameras or tickets on the street, I got a ticket today that apparently is from back in November. And when we checked the site, it wasn't on the site at all. You know, it immediately comes on the site. A month later, wasn't on the site, but now I have a ticket that also says I've got like a week or two to pay it before the fines start going up. So I am concerned that we do have. I still think in general, this whole system is an issue, and
Yeah.
I don't want to quickly move it unfavorable, but we do have some issues. I mean, they said a third of the money due was out of state.
Is there a way?
Roddy.
I'm sorry.
Pat, could you please mute yourself?
No,
Thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Delegate Love.
I believe at one point we had talked about a grace period. Is there a way to, I don't know if we can do that, but in light of the mail problems, in light of what Delegate Boyce just mentioned, I mean, I agree with Delegate Jacobs that it's got a massive fiscal note, and I am very concerned about that. But Delegate Boyce raises some really good questions.
She absolutely does. Yeah.
So is there a
anybody
way?
from MDOT on?
Sorry?
Is anybody from MDOT on?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. Bradley Ryan here from MDTA.
Okay, Bradley, can we talk a little bit about the mail and people not getting, you know, what are we looking at time-wise? I think that, you know, there's a lot of concern. I think it's legitimate concern with the post office when people are getting their bills and people getting dinged and having to pay late fees and getting all trapped by this when they're just not getting their bills in a timely manner. Can you speak to that, please?
Yes, sir. So that is a problem that we recognize, and it's definitely something that we work with our customers on. If they come to us, we work with them on a one-to-one basis, and it's definitely something, again, we recognize, we understand, and we're working with them on.
What does that mean?
Yeah, what does that
Yeah,
mean?
and
Yeah.
is that only if they call you? What if
Right.
someone doesn't know they can?
Oof, yeah.
Yes, ma'am. So yeah, if you know, we have no way of knowing if they've got it late unless they come to us. And if they do, we're willing to work with them, and we do it often, where we will waive any sort of civil penalties because of delays in customers getting their mail. Yes, ma'am.
So let me ask you, you know what? I'm not going to ask you. I'm going to let Delegate Boyce ask you because she has, go ahead, Delegate Boyce.
Thank you so much. So I wanted to follow up because I'm going back to my notes and actually back to something Delegate Parrott talked about. I think what concerns me again is the cost of the penalty itself in ratio to the actual toll fee. And I think I asked a question last time, which I don't think I got maybe a direct answer, or maybe I did and I just didn't write it down. But really, of the, I think, $324 million owed, which includes several years, the percentage of that someone's supposed to get back to us, of what percentage of that money is actually the quote unquote late fee versus what is the actual fee? And when you do get this money in excess, also with the late fees, is that counted as like your revenue, or is that just kind of counted as your oops, we've got a little bit extra? Because I think to Delegate Parritt's point, we could do amnesty, get people to pay that $6, whatever it was, versus the $6 plus the 25 or plus whatever it is, or how much it goes up. So the question is, really still goes back to the fact that even though Delegate Krim is trying to bring this down to 25, even just given other states, and I know we've had different iterations of this bill last year and the year before, that is just so high considering the cost in general, and given the general that I think a lot of General Assembly members just don't trust the ability of this contractor to really manage this well enough. And we certainly want people to pay their bills, as Delegate Jacob will jump in and say any moment. But to what degree are we going to continue to kind of above and beyond tax people for very small fees?
Yes, ma'am. Very good questions. Let me see if I've got them all down here. The contractor issue, we are in the midst of transitioning to a new contractor for these issues with our 3G transition. As far as the percent owed late versus tolls, I'm going to have to run the numbers on that, but I'd be happy to do so and get back with you. But I know that the numbers that come in, civil penalties represent less than 5%. You know, the vast majority of the users of our facilities pay their tolls. This is a very small amount we're talking about. And again, less than 5% that come in are from civil penalties, but I will be more than happy to get the numbers for you on the percentage. Let me make sure I got your question right. The percentage owned late fees versus the actual tolls that are owed.
Yes, yes, sir. And the person that was
Yes,
on
ma'am.
the call last time, I forgot who it was, stated that the late fees were used to offset the cost of managing the service, I guess, to collect the fees. And it'd be interested to know what rate is that to justify $25, even $25 versus a $50 or whatever it is.
Correct. I'd be happy to get that for you. And what that is, it's a lot more than just mailing a late fee. We have to get with the MVA, or a lot of times out-of-state MVAs or DMVs, to do lookups on registrations. We have to do multiple mailings. We have to send folks to court, that sort of thing. So that's kind of where it snowballs. But I would be happy to get those stats for you. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
So Delegate Healy.
I wanted to go back and talk about the post office because it's really two things. When you send out the ticket, do you send a phone number where people could call if they got the mail too late to respond in a timely way so that they can work with you on it? That's one question.
Yes, ma'am. So the NOTD, as they call it, or the notice of toll due, has information on there where they can contact us, and we would be happy to work with them on that. And again,
Does it tell them that, or does it just give a phone number?
I'm not sure of the exact verbiage on that, but would be happy to get that for you on exactly what it says. Yeah, the exact verbiage. Yes, ma'am.
I'd appreciate that. But going beyond that, I mean, since we have a piece of legislation before us, what would be the consequences for the agency if we were to use this piece of legislation to require that notice be put in with the ticket, and also to give people an additional amount of time because of the failure of the Postal Service at this time?
So the exact bill before us, I think that the two biggest issues are the trust agreement, which says that only—
Yeah, I'm not asking, I'm talking about amending this bill to just focus on the issue of
mail only.
Of people getting their notice that they even owe anything so late that they don't have time to respond in a timely manner, and then they get an exorbitant late fee, which they had no way of knowing about.
I can look at that and see, to your question, what would be the result of that? How would it impact the agency? Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Yeah, and you know what I would say is, to Delegate Healy's point about bringing this back to that, that's my really big concern on this as well. Like, I get that there are late fees, and I get that there's a lot of work that needs to be done to send out notices and look up registrations and postage and all that. I get all that. Where my concern lies is if somebody, if they don't get that piece of paper in the mail for 3 or 4 weeks, the next thing you know, it snowballs, and then they have to make a bunch of phone calls and try to get in front of somebody to try and figure out, okay, well, I didn't get this until 3 days ago. And now it says I'm late, and then I get another one the next day saying I'm late, and I get all these late fees. So that's really my real concern. I get the late fees themselves, and I know they've come down. They were 50, right? So they've come down from 50 to 25. You guys made that decision, or am I incorrect on that from last year?
You are correct, Mr. Chairman. Yes, sir. Last year, our board voted to cut them to $25.
Okay. So you have a couple of things that you're going to work on for us.
I do.
And then, so Regina, you'd like, I don't know if anybody else wants to.
I had just one more question. I just thought about this. With the Easy Pass as well as with MVA, for instance, now MVA has my email address, so they'll send me an email as well as mail me, oftentimes if I opt to have it, when my registration is due. And so I'm wondering, as it relates to these video tolls, I guess the percentage of folks that would actually have an email address on file, and whether or not these can be emailed to folks versus even mailed. If that is like the issue, if mail's the issue, what is the opportunity to be able to email those with an email on file with the MVA?
Can I add to that, Mr. Chair?
Mm-hmm. Go ahead, Brooke.
Delegate Boyce raises a good point, and I'd also say, a lot of people who don't have access to email do have access to text messaging. So I would also be curious if there's any sort of notification that happens, via text message. Good point, Delegate Boyce.
Good points from both of you.
Good point, Mayor.
So yeah, I'll take the email part first. We do send out, because I know that I get them myself, monthly account balances that come into your email address. With regard to text messaging, at this point, we do not have that, Delegate, but when we transition to 3G, that will be up and running, which, you'll get text messages giving you an update on your account. So at this point, no, but in the future, yes, ma'am.
So could I ask one follow-up, Mr. Chair?
Yes, ma'am, of course.
Okay. So I guess along with that, I mean, I think what Delegate Boyce was also asking was not just sort of like monthly accounts and how your monthly balance is doing, but whether you are like when you owe something or you have a ticket or something unpaid, whether that would be emailed to you specifically. And my question is, could that be texted to you specifically? Like a text message saying like you have an unpaid toll or something.
Understood. At this point, no. Let me check about once we transition to 3G if the text message will include that, as opposed to monthly, as you mentioned, hey, you owe this, that sort of thing. Yes, ma'am.
The
Thank you.
question,
Delegate Healy has a call.
I'm sorry to interrupt. I want to be clear that one of the problems is that that now that we've gone to universal electronic tolling, and there are people who don't have easy passes. And the only way they know what they owe is to get this in the mail. And so, they wouldn't have an email on file with the authority, but they might have, if they're driving, they have something with the MVA. They might have, as Delegate Boyce pointed out, the MVA can keep that information. Would you be able to get that so that you could notify people when they owe and they don't have an easy pass?
Yes, ma'am. So we use, as required by law, we use the address that is registered with the MVA, and that's where we send the notices of toll due.
And the email address as well?
Not necessarily. If they come through and they don't have that registered, all we have to go by is their license plate. So then we do the registration lookup with the MVA, or if it's another agency out of state, we find their address, and then we send that to them.
But you only send it to them by post office, right?
And if they are not registered with, Easy Pass, then it will go to where their vehicle is registered. Yes, ma'am. Because we have no way of getting their email address.
Even if the MVA has their email address?
I can double check on that for you.
Okay.
And I think both Delegate Learman and Delegate Healy are driving home my point of that. We often talk about what we can't do, but we have the resources of our neighbors to the left and right that actually have the information. So if I'm getting a email every 2 years saying I got to pay that $150, $175 registration, I'm not sure why, respectfully, the same couldn't be done for those who have an email on file with the MVA, at least in Maryland. And to Delegate Learman's point, everybody's got a phone number. Everybody's got a cell phone to a degree. So that means everybody at least has text messaging and could have that also text. So I know we kind of went down a rabbit hole with this bill, but I think it's important.
No worries. And I'm happy to look into that and get you some answers.
So, Byron, let me say this. We'll hold the bill. But I think what you're hearing from the committee as a whole is the really big concern here is the post office and folks maybe getting these, these fines really, really late and not having enough time to respond. And then all of a sudden they get dinged $25 and that snowballs into more and more and more when it's really the post office problem is not their fault. It's a federal agency and a federal problem. So if you could look into, whether it's texting and email, just trying to figure out other ways of making sure folks get the bill in the mail and they can pay the bill in a normal period of time where they're not getting it and then being told that it's due the next day kind of a thing. That seems to be the common thread here. Is that good?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. I'll get on that immediately and be sure to get back with the committee on that. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Okay, let's move.
Mr. Chair, I'm sorry, I had one question.
Okay, go ahead.
You said that you're in the process of getting a new contractor because that was one of the issues that we heard, but it seems like maybe we heard the same thing last year or the last time we talked about that. Where are you in the process with this new contractor?
Yes, ma'am. So there's lots of system integration, testing, and that sort of thing. And we're working out all the kinks in the system, and it's a work in progress, but it is something that is a lot of time is being spent on. I don't have a dead date for you, but it's a very big priority of switching over to the new system, which will provide our customers a lot of customer-friendly services and will run much more smoother.
So are you or are you not getting a new contractor to do this?
Yes, ma'am. Yep, that's in. It's right now we're in the transition period, if that makes sense. Just switching from one to the other, and there's lots of, again, system integration issues that honestly are above my head that we need to work out, at which point we'll move on to the new contractor. Yes, ma'am.
So then has the new contractor been selected? Has the RFP gone out? Has there been responses? I think that's what I'm trying to get at.
The answer is yes to all of your questions.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
Okay, Brian, you got a lot of work to do.
I do, but I am on it, sir.
Yeah, I mean, I think I think all these are really good points. Is also the point about the contractor. I've heard about the contractor as well and moving from one contract to the next. And I think the big thing is like, how do we ensure that people, if they don't have an easy pass or for whatever reason, they get a video toll, that they don't have to pay late fees unless they legitimately got it in a reasonable period of time and they missed all the deadlines and they were notified and it's all on their own. But if they're getting it the day before it's due, like, again, all right, let's go.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Okay.
Mr. Chairman, just to be clear here, this is Bradley Ryan we're speaking to, and it comes up as BR Ryan.
Thank you. Thank you.
With Brad Rifkin in here, this could get confusing, but that's Bradley Ryan. Thank you,
No
Bradley.
worries.
Thank you,
Thank
Bradley.
you.
Thank you, Bradley. Sorry about that. Okay, let's go to 383 the rental car cameras. Delegate Cars Bill 383. So two things. One, I've been having some conversations with Patrick reference our school bus bills, which we had kind of a similar issue with over the past couple of years, and we kind of created some unique legislation to help deal with school bus red light cameras that may have some bearing in this conversation. Patrick, can you talk a little bit about that to the committee?
Well, according to the rental car companies, I know the sponsor would disagree, but this program that we put in for the school bus cameras has been a complete failure. Basically, they lose 40% when they try to recoup when they pay the tickets. And that program was put in to try to give them a way to, if they go through the process, if they send out the notices and they don't get the money, then they get waived. Save them some of that or all of that 40%. Well, it's just too convoluted a process for them. So it's like, if the program's a failure, do we want to expand it was really what came to the question. And, it's not saying don't repeal the exclusion. That's up to you. You can still repeal the exclusion, but the program itself.
The program itself, what, hasn't worked? You dropped off.
Yeah, but if a program's not working, do you want to take a bill to the floor that expands it?
Mr.
Yeah,
Chair,
Mr. Chair, yeah.
I am not as concerned about the big companies. What actually really concerned me was Mr. DiLorenzo coming in and talking about what this would do. We have a local business owner who's got car rental companies in Maryland, and it really would hurt him. And that concerns me a lot. You know, for parity's sake, you know, there are only 2 states that don't have this, and you know, so I was leaning towards that, but his testimony is very concerning to me.
I would certainly agree with that. And
I do too.
Here's, I mean, and so, I mean, I know others, and I've heard others say this, that's not our problem if they can't get tickets to the appropriate jurisdictions in an appropriate time. But this goes back to now the bigger issue we have within this pandemic about the mail. And so I think, you know, he mentioned having his local company, but yes, if you're getting thousands of tickets a day, and then you've got 45 days, I know per the bill, to get them to the appropriate jurisdiction so that they can then send them out. And suppose you don't get them on time, you end up eating it. And so when Patrick talked about the program, you know, I even wonder about the grace period that these companies would be able to have beyond 45 days to be able to send it. Because again, yes, some people will get it and pay it, but like, I just don't think it's fair that whether you're a big company or a little company, that you have to eat the cost of, you know, little Regina T. Boyce, you know, running a red light, whether I knew it or not, in state or out of state. You know, I just, you know, I think it's hard, and I think it's hard to then have him to spare out all of that mail to make sure it gets to the right jurisdiction so they can appropriately, which would be easy, right? They can hold the person accountable. It's off your shoulders. But where is the, you know, capacity to do so, right? And then where is then the grace period? If you don't make it in 45 days or whatever the time frame is, you have to eat that cost. And so, you know, it is something that's a bit hard for me. I mean, we don't want to make anything harder for anybody, especially not now. But I do understand the sponsors. You know, I get what he's trying to do.
Right. Delegate Learman, I think I heard you.
No, I was just agreeing with Delegate Love, and I think Delegate Boyce raises a good point. It's amazing how all of these issues are so interconnected, but I do think she raises a good point. Were there not amendments at some point? I remember looking at some amendments. Perhaps I'm thinking of a different bill, though. I don't have them in front of me.
This bill, if we want to go ahead with the program, has amendments, but we decided you have to decide whether you want to go ahead with the bill.
Right. Okay, got it. Okay, I was just making sure it wasn't on a different bill. Thanks.
No,
I think
you're right, Delegate Learman. There were some potential amendments to the bill. Brad Rifkin, I know last week I asked you to try to come up with some other ideas to address some of these concerns. Were you able to do that?
Yeah, I spoke with a client. Unfortunately, this really is binary. I think the subcommittee has an option to either move forward or not. I mean, you touched on the school bus language that we talked with the delegate a few years ago about. It just doesn't work, unfortunately. So at this point, we remain opposed to the bill either way.
I'm sorry, Brad, remind me who you represent.
Represent Enterprise Holdings.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, anything else? Anybody else have any other?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman. I just have
Yes,
one
Bill.
question. Is this just about rental cars or is it also leased cars?
No, not leased cars.
Okay, that's all. Thank you.
Okay, there seems to be a significant amount of continued concern over passing this bill. And I do think that there's a lot of concern with the post office at this time. Like that's a really big piece of this, like when people actually get things in the mail. So what is the will of the subcommittee? Does anybody need to make a motion or want to make a motion one way or another?
I feel like we could talk about this more. I'm just, I'm sorry, Neil, did you have something to say? You're on mute, dear.
So I can't hear you, Neil.
Thank you. I was going to move unfavorable on the bill.
All right.
Second.
Okay. Any discussion on the unfavorable on the bill?
I was going to suggest we hold it, but and talk. I don't know, just because of what. along the same lines as Delegate Boyce, but since there's a motion, I will, that's my discussion on the motion, I guess.
Okay.
We want to see if the sponsor wants to withdraw it.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Yeah. Would Delegate Parrott consider withdrawing his motion?
For the purpose of talking to the sponsor, see if he wants to withdraw it. Sure.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
And I would just add that, you know, when we speak to him, there are just so many, I don't know if I want to say unanswered issues, but there just are still so many issues in general with it, because we see both sides of it. But like the last bill, you know, how do you ensure that you're getting the information to the people once the rental company decides that they can send it out and track down the rentor? So.
Okay, so we're going to hold the bill, and I am going to talk to the sponsor of the bill and see if he would like to withdraw the bill, and then we'll go from there. Okay, Delegate, let's moving on to HB 404, Delegate Fisher's bill. I did speak with her, and I have spoken with Andrea as well. Andrea, do you want to talk a little bit about your program? I know there may be some overlap. I don't know. I mean, hers is a statewide bill, and I think yours is a local bill, but we haven't heard your bill yet.
Yeah, so when we.
What bill is yours?
I'm sorry?
What bill is yours?
You would ask me the bill numbers, and I can never commit bill numbers to, it's the same bill that I had last year. I can never commit bill numbers to memory. Mine is a local bill, and it just basically mirrors Montgomery County's speed camera bill. Delegate Fisher wants to have a statewide bill that deals with child care centers. And the testimony that we had was from one of our local municipalities, which, you know, I guess some other people from around the state have also solicited or have sent in requests. What I would say is that I think that a child care center might need to be put into a different category as opposed to putting a speed camera in front of a child care center. And so what is the definition of a child care center? Is it an early learning center? Would that be considered a school?
I will tell you that she did, Delegate Fisher did send over some amendments, and I'll just read it for the committee. The child care center does not include a child care home, a child care institution, or other child care facility that does not offer or provide a residential placement for a child and an established license or registered under this title, Title 9 of the Human Services article or Title 10 of the Health General article.
That's current law.
Yeah, that's the current law. It's basically clarifying that this is like a center. It's not an in-home daycare. It's not like yeah.
So what then would be the difference between this and a regular school? I don't know what the definition
so
of
like
is.
So like there's Bright Horizons, which
I know what it is.
Oh, okay.
I know what it is. I'm just wondering, why would it not be captured in the definition of a school if it's an early learning center, a standalone early learning center? So, and that's what I'm thinking. And here's the other thing too. I know that where I live right next to a municipality, and there is a daycare center, early learning center, whatever would be captured under her definition here. And they have a speed camera right there. So I'm not sure why, you know, the other municipality who came to testify doesn't seem as though they could do it. And, you know, and how does everyone feel about this all across the state?
So I'll say, I don't believe that in Baltimore, we believe that there is, and I'll talk to DOT, but and maybe this is just a definitional and thing, and we need Patrick, we might need a little bit of research from somebody on this. I don't think that we believe that like a Bright Horizons or a Goddard is
Right.
captured in the definition of what is allowed right now to have a speed camera by it under current law. Like they are not.
That is correct.
Okay. So I think that's the loophole that Delegate Fisher is trying to give enabling do allow jurisdictions to solve.
So wouldn't we just then alter the actual definition to clarify that?
We wouldn't alter the definition in the health code. That would affect too many different other things. I think Delegate Harrison has said is that Delegate Fisher her interest is this one specific area, one specific intersection. And that her bill, Delegate Harrison's, which will give Prince George's County the ability to do it in residential areas. This apparently is a residential area and would then qualify. So she doesn't need her bill. Does that sound correct, Delegate Harrison?
Well, and that would just be for Prince George's County, and apparently she's trying to do it all across the state. And I just think that it seems to me that, a child care center based on what what we think of as a child care center, the Bright Horizons, the Genesis, the Kinder Care. I guess I just don't understand why those couldn't be considered a school, because that's basically what they are. They're early learning. They're just for those who are under 5 years old, but what's the difference between that and a school?
The speed camera law says K through 12.
Okay. Well,
Still confused. So it says, again, the speed camera law says, so I guess the question would be, could a jurisdiction under current law put a speed monitoring system near an early childhood learning center?
No.
Okay.
they have one in my, and it's right around the corner from my house. And I know that every time, because there's not a school that's in that area. And it's a local municipality in Prince George's County, and they've done it. So, and I rode past there the other day just to see exactly where the cameras were, and the cameras are directed only in the direction of that early learning center.
Well, it could be an unlawful camera. That has happened many times since this law went into effect.
Okay.
Other specifics before I could know that for sure, but
The way this bill is different from last year's bill, Patrick, is it does.
it's not different. It's not different at all.
Nope.
Well, I don't understand that then, because
Is it not, does that mean that last year we just didn't understand sort of the definition of child? We hadn't done.
No, we had this exact same discussion last year, and
I know, but last year we were under the impression, we did not know whether like an at-home daycare or something would be covered. And my impression is now we do know that is not encompassed in the definition that is in there. Is that not right?
That's right.
that is correct, but we did have that discussion. You're right.
Yeah.
We did determine that at homes last year are not covered, and you're correct, they aren't.
and in this bill, they're not either. In this bill, they're not
Right.
covered either.
They are not. That's correct.
And that was the big, but
So we are
Patrick,
talking.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, I'm trying to get final numbers, and really, quite frankly, the sponsor should be getting us these numbers, but the library's looking into it. I've looked into it, and we are at the same number we are last year, which was at the end of last year. This would affect probably between 1,600 and 2,000 areas in the state.
Oof.
But don't speed cameras have to be authorized by the local jurisdiction first?
Yes.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yes. This is just enabling. Yeah.
I mean, my preference, you all know how I feel about cameras, would be a local bill on this if that's the real concern.
Yeah.
But if it's the will of the committee to move this, I'm not going to stand in the way of that.
Well, the only thing that I would say to that, just Delegate Love, to your point, is that locally, we have one that would take care of this issue. I guess the bigger issue for her is across the state. I don't know who she's speaking with across the state, who the advocates are or whatever, but locally, the one that I have will resolve this. And it's the same bill that I had last year as well. It just hasn't been scheduled.
So yours is enabling legislation so that jurisdictions can make their own decisions on speed cameras.
Yes,
So that
Has
way,
your bill come out of the delegation yet?
yes.
Was it Friday? Because I don't remember seeing the letter.
It came out of delegation a long time ago, and I know Crystal, our delegation administrator, said that she was going to check over there to see where it was, and I just can't remember the number. I'll try to look it up real quick though.
when is your bill scheduled to be heard?
I don't have a schedule yet.
And so we have to get that has to be scheduled, and we need a letter from the Prince George's County delegation.
Yeah, she said that that's been done, and it was done quite some time ago, but I'll have to,
They haven't received.
It doesn't have a bill number, Andrea.
she gave it to, okay, I'll find it. I'll find it and let you know.
Well, I will say that from a policy perspective, although we haven't heard your bill yet, if we were to pass a bill like yours that gives the other jurisdictions the right to set up their own program, then each jurisdiction could set up their own program for childcare centers. Is that the logic that we're using here?
They already have the right to implement a speed camera system under current law.
For K to 12 and universities.
And they haven't, correct? It's just Montgomery County and Prince George's, limited Prince George's.
Yeah,
If
but
I could.
Montgomery County has different.
There's a lot of speed camera programs.
Oh, there are? Okay.
Montgomery County was the original speed camera law. And when the statewide law was passed, a lot of the prerogatives that they had in Montgomery County were grandfathered in, so that they are different from everywhere else.
Okay.
One of the ways
Mainly-
they're different is that they can
Mainly in
do
the residential
neighborhoods.
community.
Sorry.
And and the bill that I have is mirroring Montgomery County.
Patrick, go ahead. Yeah, I know you were in the middle of saying something.
No, Delegate Harrison's correct. The only difference between Montgomery and the regular program is the residential zones, which is a big difference.
I'm sorry. Tell me that. So what is allowed in Montgomery County?
Montgomery County, and it's kind of irrelevant to Baltimore City, but Montgomery County, you are allowed to put speed cameras in residential zones. Nowhere else in the state can you do that. Now, it's not relevant to Baltimore City really, because pretty much everywhere in Baltimore City is within a school district or within.
Right.
So Baltimore City kind of has free reign anyway.
Actually, we don't. That's why we're asking to be able to put them on 83.
Well, that's a state
different
highway. That's a
places.
different thing.
Yeah. But okay. Thanks for clarifying.
Okay,
So I'm sorry, Delegate Learman, when you said asked to put them on 83, is that relevant to this bill?
No, not at all. I was just saying we don't have free reign. Like there are a lot of places that I think I get requests quite frequently from constituents who say, can we get a camera here or there? And it's not near enough to a school.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
so DOT says no.
Well, why don't you all do a local bill as well?
It sounds like we might need to. We have a local bill this year on a separate speed camera issue on 83. So maybe this is a next year local bill.
Well, I'm wondering, Andrea, one of the reasons that you're bringing this is because
HB 619.
is because we get so many of the Indian Head Highway and all the individual pieces, which this subcommittee continues to get every year as individual pieces. So I think it's part of a broader conversation about what enabling to allow jurisdictions to make those decisions on their own is probably the big piece of this conversation, because it would yield less legislation coming to the individual subcommittees and give more power to the local jurisdictions to make the decisions that they see fit on their local roads, not state roads, but local roads, right, Patrick? Is that?
Yeah, I guess I was looking up House Bill 619. I'm going to check for the letter on that, Delegate Harrison.
Thank you.
Okay, so what is the will of the committee on 404? Is there a will right now? Is anybody asking to?
Can I,
Yes, Delegate Healy, please go ahead.
I'd like to ask that we hold it until we find out about Delegate Harrison's bill, and if that and go back and ask Delegate Fisher if that's sufficient, then maybe she can withdraw her bill and we'll just deal with the other bill. But I think we need to have that conversation with the sponsor.
Yeah, I think that what we need to do as a committee and a subcommittee is kind of try and figure out where we want speed camera policy going or moving forward. That's really the big question here, right? Delegate Love, I see you laughing. What's so funny?
You know where I want
Like, I want it stopped.
You want speed cameras everywhere, right?
Yeah, you know where I want it too.
Jay wants them everywhere. I want them nowhere.
Yeah.
Okay, so Delegate Healy, you're asking to hold the bill. I will talk to the bill sponsor. I talked with her this morning. I'll talk with her again. And if everybody can get some thought, I'll also talk to the chair of our committee to kind of see if there's a larger will here as to what kind of policy we want to set moving forward, because I think that's important, right? Delegate
If I
Healy?
could address that just for a second, because I was here when we did the statewide bill, there were a lot of things, a lot of restrictions that were built into the statewide bill because it was very controversial and people didn't want to have it at all. It was years before it passed. And Montgomery County had a hard time passing it in the first place. And then they finally got it through local courtesy. But I think the times have changed and people have seen how it works, and it has changed behavior in the school zones. And now we're having people that actually are asking to have it in more places. In the past, there were problems with some of the systems, and it was considered a money grab. And so we're bent over backwards to make sure that it was clearly not that. But I think times have changed. So I think we need to have that conversation about maybe we need to open it up more to local control again.
Okay.
Incidentally, 619, it's a delegation bill, so it doesn't list under my name.
That's why I couldn't find it. Got it. Thank you.
Okay, so let's do this. Delegate Healy asked to hold the bill. I will have a conversation with the chair of our committee. I'll talk with him and see. And Delegate Harrison, could you talk with the Delegate Fisher and just really like sit down with her? I know you've had some conversations, but I'd really like it if you guys can kind of hammer out a way forward for the two of you, because I'll leave it there. Okay. Let's go to 480, Delegate Barbay's plug-in electric drive vehicle.
Sponsor problem.
Spots.
Major sponsor problem.
This bill is going to take a little bit of work. I talked with Patrick about it earlier. Just making sure we get the definitions, the striping, the signs, everything right, setting policy. The reason I say that is because all of you know that like what's going to happen in the EV world in the next couple of years. I don't know who saw it. I guess I'm a geek on this stuff, but over the weekend, all the talk that General Motors has been doing since 1996, when they like grabbed up all those like really cool electric vehicles, 25 years ago and crushed them all. And then they'd be talking about how they're actually going to come to the party with electric vehicles. And they really are this time. Well, over the weekend on their website, you will see they upgraded the Chevy Bolt to a new updated version that is more affordable than the original version, has more range. And they also are coming out with a small SUV as well. That's also very competitively priced, considering that it's an EV. So moving forward, I mean, this is just the future. And I really want to make sure that that we get our chair's bill right, because we're going to be sending some serious policy. I mean, we can always come back and fix it, but Patrick, do you want to talk about EVABC and some of the other, just making sure we get this piece of legislation right as far as public, private, being able to write tickets, whether it has to be on the ground, printed on the ground, and a sign? Because I know for for ticketing or towing vehicles that are parked in certain zones that has to be posted. So could you give us a little background and what the law looks like and then where we are on this as a whole?
Well, as the chair said, that we did have a number of amendment requests. These bills can be very difficult to get right. The first request was the definition of EV. I know we've got a couple of EV owners on this Zoom. It seems like a legitimate point here. EVs are getting bigger, trucks and the like, even dump trucks apparently. And, you know, you can't cut them out of being able to charge. It makes no sense. The current definition was written in mind for the tax credit. It's been suggested that we define a plug-in vehicle. We could probably just call it an electric vehicle or something like that. It means a vehicle that is registered. We probably don't even need that language. That is propelled to a significant extent by an electric motor that draws electricity from a battery that can be recharged from an external source of electricity. Seems like a simple and straightforward definition. It's in the testimony. There's also suggested amendments on signage and pavement markings. Mako said, I believe correctly, that the green markings that are required in the bill, which are also required by some other states, do not pass muster with federal law. I was just going to suggest, instead of specifying certain markings and signage, just say, you know, they shall sign it and put it in markings consistent with federal law. Making the counties know what that is and the like. Just give it broad, give them a lot of discretion to get it right. There's no reason we have to be nitty gritty and say, you know, it has to be this color, it has to be this color. And this same for the markings and the signage. And then someone asked at the hearing a question as to who would put up the signs. Obviously, in state and local areas, the state and locals will put up the signs, but I think they were thinking more in terms of charging stations that would theoretically be owned by a private company and located, you know, throughout, you know, just like gas stations in various different places around the state. Now, I would suspect that anybody who owns a charging station, electric company, there was some suggested language about, you know, anybody who gets money from ratepayers, utilities, obviously, or gets state money, sounded like from CEF for putting up their stations. That's the rebate program, would have to do it a certain way. I don't know if we can do that or not. But I also wonder, I mean, these people, it would seem to me, if they're making money off this, they have every incentive to do it right. Might not have to really get into the private property thing.
I will say that in some cases, some of those companies are not making money. Some, like, for example, near me, there's a couple of giant stores that have put in level 2 charging facilities just so that their customers were in there for half an hour, 45 minutes, can get a little bit of juice and it's free. So therein lies the problem.
They have an incentive to keep it free from non-electric vehicles, you know, space.
Yeah, so that's what we need to do, is make sure that the standards are right so that you know, ICE vehicles can't park in those spots without getting towed or ticketed.
The chair and I had talked, and if the committee is willing to go in these directions, I'd be glad to draft some language and have it ready for Thursday's meeting.
I'd like that.
Yeah, what language specifically are you referring to?
Alter the definition,
Yep.
Alter the signage and marking standards to just require them to be consistent with federal law, and to play around with language. Maybe I'll put in a couple of options with how to deal with the private companies that have these charging stations. Like you said, giant, that's an example. Somebody might offer it as a courtesy versus, you know, some utility that might have a lot of charging spaces, you know, that they treat like a gas station. They would be.
Are you talking about things like restaurants and grocery stores and
Yeah,
hotels?
Anything that's a private ownership.
Okay.
No, we can for like a parking lot in a supermarket, the rules of the road apply to private roads, i.e. parking lots, that are generally open to the public. So we can govern that. But where it's purely private, that's where it
Like
gets sticky.
if it's a hotel and the guests are allowed to use it, or if it's a restaurant and patrons are allowed to use it. But
I think we're okay there. It's
any-
more like if you had what is functionally an electric gas station.
which I think there's only one in Maryland, in Tacoma Park.
And then there's, of course, garages and
And the utilities, because the utilities, don't forget, a lot of you signed on to a letter a couple of years ago allowing the utilities to get into the business of setting up some charging stations as well. So we need a standard. Again, Patrick, can we reach out to some of the kind of volunteer folks like EVADC and some others, because I know they've looked at some of this from around the country.
right.
And I was on a call a couple of weeks ago, and apparently, I think it was California came up with a policy, but according to folks, they kind of messed up the policy. So what was told to me by the folks that are really, really into this, that live and breathe this, is that that California did some things right and they actually did some things wrong. So and they were basically saying, please do what you can to make sure we don't completely model California's in this case. So we can reach out if you want. We can set up a quick Zoom with them. I could talk to Molly.
So we're gonna work on this bill to make sure it's right, and then,
Yeah,
Yeah, we'll have some language on Thursday to discuss.
perfect.
Yeah.
Yay.
because I think in this particular case, some other states have been trying. They have the same exact problem we have, which is how do you make it universal? So anybody who pulls in, it's very clear what the policy is, and we have a chance to actually maybe set the policy right for the rest of the country based on the fact that some other states got kind of close, but there's some holes. So,
And as we go towards Thursday, I had another part of the bill that I'd like to look at. This bill is saying no stopping, standing, or parking in those parking spots. But I would think that we just want to say parking. Like if you're stopping, you're sitting in the car, and if you're standing, you're sitting in the car. Only parking is when you actually leave. So I just think it's too restrictive. Could we look at doing an amendment to make it just parking instead of stopping and standing also?
so
I might
from
have
what you're
that.
saying, hold on. So from what you're saying, it's okay for somebody to pull into an EV spot and just leave their car running and sitting and taking up the spot, whether they're charging or not. Is that what you're saying?
Well, like standing is when you come in, you drop your passenger off, and you leave. I think that should be fine, because if these spots are pretty close to the front entrance of Walmart or somewhere, it might make sense to be able to come in, do that, and get out.
Delegate Love.
Thank you. The problem I have with that is sort of what the chair was getting at. Like when I went to the grocery store today, there was a gentleman in his car the entire time. From when I pulled my car in, I went into the grocery store, I did my shopping, I came out and I left. That could be considered standing. So if it were an EV spot, he would have kept me from charging because he was standing, he was in the car. So I see your point. If someone's just going in and out, dropping off somebody, I get that. I understand what you're trying to get to, but I think it's creating problems unintentionally.
I would certainly agree. It's just like the handicap issue. It's like, you're there for a second, but that's one more second somebody who needs that space can't park there. So I think it's, certain vehicles are allowed. I mean, the issue, I think, Delegate Parrott, is going to be enforcement. Who's going to enforce the person to knock on the window and tell them they need to go, especially if they're not charging their car? So I think it just keeps folks from knowing that they can't casually hang out there as well. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I could see, to Delegate Boyce's point specifically, I have a friend who's mother has to park in those handicap spots. And when people do what you're saying, he becomes extraordinarily angry, like really angry about why somebody's parking in the spot.
Delegate Harrison, can you mute yourself?
So, okay, well, you're going to work on that. We'll do a little quick EVADC catch up to make sure we catch all the language right and, see if we can make it as close to perfect as possible based on some other states' mistakes. Good, Patrick? Good, everybody? Anybody else questions on this? This is really cool stuff because we could really be setting the template for a lot of other states, and a lot of other states have tried it and made some mistakes. So it's pretty cool. I think it's cool anyway. So, okay. HB, move it to the next one. HB 483, Delegate Turner's. We passed this bill last year, didn't we, Patrick?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, we worked everything out and everybody was happy and satisfied.
Move favorable.
Second.
All right, all those in favor of the favorable signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone against? Any abstentions? Okay, look, we passed the bill. Yay, okay. That is great. Okay, House Bill 494, Vehicle Laws, Reckless Driving, Excessive Speed. We did do a lot on Delegate Vaughn's other bill that has to do, I think, with speed contests and reckless driving. Here is another one of his bills. So I guess the question is,
Can
So
you scroll down? Because I know in the original bill, there was you must appear in court. Okay, you've taken all that out.
right,
I have a question on this.
yes,
Patrick, we've already got in law speeding in excess of the posted speed limit by 30 miles or more is 5 points. In excess of 20 miles when the speed limit is 65 is also 5 points. So what is this? This puts this in reckless driving, which is also 5 points. So what is this bill actually doing?
Well, it's adding another element, another option really
charging.
to how you can get charged for reckless driving.
Actually, reckless driving is 6 points. So is there another penalty that I'm missing?
Well, the fine
The fine?
is up to 1,000.
What
is
is
at
the fine currently for speeding in the excess of 30 miles or more, or 20 miles or more over a 65-mile-an-hour speed limit?
All speeding fines are maximum 500.
Okay, so it's an increase in fine.
Doubling.
Yeah. One of the things that I was talking with Patrick about earlier, and I think it's, I'm just going to factually say it because I think it's important for people to realize, and that is that this is all math and exponential. So if you're going 20 miles an hour or 30 miles an hour over the speed limit when you are in a 30-mile-an-hour zone, you're going double the speed limit. If you're going 20 miles an hour or 30 miles an hour over the speed limit when the speed limit is at 55 or 65, it's a different calculation. Okay, so what
I mean, sometimes if you're driving on 97 South, if you're driving 20 miles above the speed limit, you might be barely keeping up with traffic.
that was kind of my point. Thank you,
Or
Delegate.
even on
Saying,
50.
if I drive the speed limit on 97 South, I am taking my life into my hands and making 97 South even more dangerous.
That's right, and you're driving an EV, so you gotta let people know you can keep up in that EV.
Yeah.
So,
Same thing on Route 50. I think the fine is excessive that's listed here.
so back to
Me too.
Delegate Love's point. I'm sorry, Delegate Healy, did you have a question?
No, I agree with Delegate Harrison.
Okay, so back to Delegate Love's question, or question/statement. What does this bill do? Does anybody, what do we
And
want
it
to do?
just adds, how I read it is there's already reckless driving. And what this is doing is adding another way to be charged with reckless driving, right? It's either, right now it's if you're driving in wanton or willful disregard, or in a manner that indicates a wanton or willful disregard for safety. And this just adds, or
20
you're
miles. an
driving
hour.
20 miles an hour over. So,
Correct.
just like period. You might not be driving in a way that in a manner that indicates a wanton or willful disregard for safety, but you are driving 20 miles over the posted speed limit,
And some
and
work.
ergo, therefore, you are driving recklessly.
But you can already be charged with speeding. And it seems to me the
Right.
only thing that getting reckless driving is going to get you is an additional point, an additional $500.
Maximum
That's-
500, but yes, that's
maximum.
correct.
Right. So
Okay.
that's what we're really getting at. So this is just, if you're 20 miles or more, you're adding a maximum of $500. You're going from maximum of 500 to maximum of 1,000. And you're going from 5 points to 6 points.
Right. So to your earlier point, I guess to the earlier point that was made in this conversation, and that is, Delegate Learman, you made it very clear you'll get run off the road if you're not doing it at a certain speed. So I'm not hearing that people are really excited about this bill. Is there anybody that would like to make a motion on this bill one way or another?
I
Move unfavorable.
Move unfavorable.
Second.
Second.
There's a second. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor of the unfavorable, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. The bill is unanimously voted down. Okay, and then the last bill for us to have a conversation about is the Chair's Bill, HB 519, Equipment Safety Glass Replacement Standards. Let's talk about this bill. It could be a little complicated. So what are some thoughts? I've had some conversations about this bill. I know.
Mr. Chairman, do you want to ask Phil and April if they want to come on?
Yes.
Also, I have done some more work on this bill. The testimony that I submitted,
Okay.
gives a good outline of it.
Okay.
Hi, everyone. This is April from the MBA.
Thank you, April.
And Phil is also on from the MBA.
Hello, everyone.
Hey,
Hi, Phil.
Having flashbacks, Phil?
It's been a while.
Okay, April, go ahead.
So like we submitted in our letter, we're just concerned with the implementation of this. So these companies are not regulated right now that like the bill proposes. So our issue with this bill is we don't have the capacity or the, how should I say this? Basically, we don't have the capacity to be able to regulate these companies right now with how the bill is set up. When it comes down to it, it would be like a civil matter so say someone doesn't insert these windows on compared to the regulations. So they go against the regulations. We don't have any way to go back and say, okay, are we fining them? How are we working this out within the MBA? So our implementation would be just to say, okay, you did not follow the regulations. Sorry about that. I apologize. I'm so sorry. We would have to suggest that they go the civil route. Phil, if you would like to add to that, that's where we are.
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, we just don't have the expertise to know. I guess this would have us set forth in regulations, the installation standards for safety glass. We did talk with some folks about this. NHTSA has not set any standards, so there's really no federal standards, safety standards. So we'd be coming up with standards based on the trade association standards, which may be good standards, but we would have to set forth the regulations, but we wouldn't have the expertise or the resources to be able to determine whether somebody used the right type of glue, whether it was installed in a vehicle improperly, with the wrong kind of weather conditions or didn't set long enough, so if somebody's windshield starts leaking, because we're the regulatory agency, it's likely we'll get the calls on it, but we don't have any kind of enforcement mechanism, unlike with the dealers, which we have administrative actions that we can take against dealers because we hold the license for the dealers. So we can take administrative action against their license if dealers do something contrary to the regulations. Under the statute, we would set forth the regulations, but we wouldn't have any kind of regulatory authority to enforce those standards. So it would have to be a civil matter between those. We could set forth the regulations, but ultimately, if glass was improperly installed and then ended up injuring somebody or causing any other kind of damage, it would have to be just a civil matter. People could make complaints to us, but we would not be able to investigate or determine whether or not the windshield or the glass was improperly installed.
So what you're saying is that you would prefer not to get involved in this and just leave this as a civil matter because you don't feel that you have or there's no standard level of expertise to determine what those might look like. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I guess what we're saying is by default, it would have to be, because if we did to the regulations, we could certainly model regulations after something the trade association puts forward. We
Right.
can put regulations into effect saying you have, but according to their guidelines, it has to set for a certain number of hours and all that stuff. The glue has to be a certain type. But if somebody were to make a complaint, later, if their windshield started leaking or if, the windshield got damaged and somebody got injured in a crash, they could allege that it was not installed properly. We wouldn't have any, our investigators, we don't have that expertise. Our investigators would not be able to go out and say, yeah, this, turns out the glue that they used was the wrong kind of glue, or we just don't have that capacity to be able to do that. So we can set forth the regulations, but the remedy would then be whoever was injured would just have to, would have to go to civil court and sue the installer, essentially. The installers are unregulated right now. So it could be any kind of repair shop that does this. And
would that be a bad thing, Phil?
Yeah.
no, not necessarily. I mean, we'd be able to, they would have a standard then, and they would be able to say, hey, you didn't follow the MVA guidelines, which say, it has to set for 2 hours before before the vehicle's moved, or whatever the standard is. They could make that allegation. They would have to just prove it civilly. In other words, we would just not be able to contribute to the investigative end of that.
I certainly understand that, but wouldn't it be worse if you didn't have anything to follow from, if someone did a bad repair or put in something improper? So this seems like a first step. At least people know what the standard is. And second, would it make sense if, and I certainly understand what you're saying, and nobody wants to get work that they can't actually complete, but would it be fair if you're already using the industry to set the standards? Would it not be possible for you to work with that industry to also potentially do some of the enforcement?
Well, I guess we don't have the ability to enforce because they're not licensed. So the industry is right now not licensed.
Right. They're not licensed, but yet you're using their standards to create the standards.
Yeah, we would be able to put forth the standards. Really, we could just put the standards in our regulation, which is what the bill does. We could do that, and then they would just have to be privately enforced, because anybody can get in this business. I could just hang out a shingle and say I'm starting a glass replacement or glass repair shop.
That's kind of the point.
Sounds like that's.
If everybody could hold on, please, for just
Sorry.
1 second. Sorry. I know Kathy has been wanting to speak for a little bit. Kathy, do you have anything that you want to add to this?
Yeah, that is the point of this bill would be to have a standard in regulation that someone could take to the Consumer Protection Agency and say, I was in this accident, this came through, and find out, were they using this standard? Because Some installers use it. Members of this industry association use it. And if they're not and if they aren't using it, and these members of this association get audited on whether or not they're using it, and it's very complex. It entails different manufacturers of glue, different, the way you insert it, how you handle it. You've also got, cars that are being controlled by cameras. So the intent of the Safety Glass Association is that there is a standard somewhere that if a consumer is upset about what happened with their car, they can go to the Attorney General's office and say, I went to this company and they violated the regulation. They're not using the standard for insertion, and then they have a case. Right now, they don't really have, this is like a benchmark for a consumer to use. Basically, that's it.
Right. Is that pretty much, I think, Delegate Boyce's point earlier? Is that pretty much your point, your same point, Delegate Boyce? Yeah, okay. All right. Is there any further discussion on the bill, or do we have a motion on the bill?
I'll move favorable.
I'll second.
Okay, any discussion? All those in favorable of the favorable, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any
Mr.
opposed?
Chairman, can I ask a question of Phil and April real quick? I'm sorry, I was on mute.
Sure.
Phil, if you were going to, April too, if you were going to do something like this, would this be the type of thing that you would do in conjunction with the automotive and with the state police, the automotive enforcement division?
Yeah, I mean, they're the ones that would have more expertise than us in, in equipment, safety, equipment repair and auto repair. So we probably would end up consulting them. But I think the way the bill is drafted, we would have to just use the standards of the trade association, put those in regulation, and then, then folks would have a standard, I guess, to use.
Can I just
suggest an amendment, Patrick?
Yes.
Are you suggesting an amendment?
It might be good to spell that out.
I might agree with you on that one.
And I'm sorry, Mr. Chair.
Delegate Love, please.
Thank you. I'm looking at the letter from the Safe Light Group right now. And they're favorable with amendments. Has somebody gone through this and?
Yes, I have. I can tell.
Go ahead.
Safe Light is the largest glass installer in the nation. Some of the issues they raise don't even apply to this legislation. They talk about ANSI. They talk about the word aftermarket. They say no other state has this. That's true. The state of California has it. They talk about ANSI and NHTSA. NHTSA has nothing to do with this and will not have anything to do with anything installed aftermarket. That's their position. ANSI is National Standards Institute. All ANSI does is evaluate whether your process in setting up a standard was open and transparent. If you say the ANSI, you have to use the organization's name. It's kind of like IEEE or MS-DOS. MS is Microsoft. IEEE is the International Electrical and Electronic and Electrical Engineers. That they're the people that have the knowledge that create the standard. ANSI says, yeah, you did a good job in your process. That's basically it. I think half of Maryland installers already belong to that. I think there's other issues surrounding well, let me just say this. 5 of the largest nationwide installers, 4 of the 5 are members of AGSC. 1 is not, and I think I know which one isn't. So that's why I think I don't think they really understand this. Let me put it that way. I think there's other issues in their opposition.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so we were in just this close to voting this bill, what looked like it was out. Is there any particular reason that anybody need or want to hold this bill for any reason?
So I thought Patrick wanted to maybe add an amendment of clarification. Was that correct, Patrick?
Just to say, clarify that they would work in coordination with the state police.
I think I would like that because it then doesn't take somebody just off the hook of saying, we can't enforce this at all. There would be a little bit of help in that enforcement, and certainly.
Well, they would help them develop the regulation.
They would help
Yes,
with the reg.
yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
Okay.
Sounds good.
Why don't we hold this, and then Patrick, you want to draft that amendment?
We could, if you're okay with the concept, it's a simple amendment, you can vote it out.
I'd move the amendment.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay. Any opposed? Okay. On the bill itself, do we want to hold the bill or move the bill?
Move the bill.
Second.
Yep.
Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? No, okay, on the bill as amended. Thank you. Great work today, everybody.
Good job. I don't think we moved this fast out.